have your Bibles, I invite you to turn with me to John chapter 1. John chapter 1, we're going to be in verses 40 through 42. In fact, I'll probably back up and read a little bit before then, but let me just begin by looking at our title slide up there. You might recognize most of the poster except for what we kind of added to it as the old advertisement for the movie It's a Wonderful Life. What a great movie A Wonderful Life is. Many people don't know it, even though it kind of revolves, the story kind of touches around a lot of Christmas things. It wasn't released at Christmas time. It was released in the summer. It was a summer blockbuster. Here we are in July, the midst of the summer, hot. And we're going to talk a little bit about It's a Wonderful Life. In the story of It's a Wonderful Life, George Bailey is a young man who's got a lot of dreams and aspirations. He wants to see the whole world. He wants to be a military man. He wants to be a hero. He wants to make it big. And because of different circumstances, things that comes up throughout his life, he seems to miss out on all of the big dreams that he has. And he comes towards a crisis point, and he wonders if it would be just better if he had never lived at all, because he didn't think he had a wonderful life or even a good life. And God sends an angel to kind of show him what life would be without him. So I want to ask you a question today. What makes a life a wonderful life in the kingdom of God? And what does God define as a life well lived? Now, in the movie It's a Wonderful Life, if you watch the movie, the answer is faithfulness. And if you read the Bible, you'll also find that the answer is faithfulness. Old George made a difference in people's life because in every situation he was faced with, he had to make a moral decision to do what was easy or to do what was right. And I want to tell you today, you're going to face some questions, not in the sermon, but in your daily life. You're going to face some situations where you have to decide what is easy and what is right. In our biblical story this morning that we're about to read, we're going to see a man who doesn't get all the accolades that many of the other folks in the Bible do. He's not the spokesperson for the group. He's not the guy who's trying to vie for first place and everything. But he is one of the greatest soul winners of all of history because he was faithful and always chose to do what was right instead of what was easy. And we're going to look at several little instances in his life, 3 to be particular, in which he chose to do the right thing, and because of that, he changed the world. And I want to tell you today that if you'll do the right thing, you may never be famous, but you can change the world. You can change the world by being faithful to the Lord. Let's begin by looking at, I want to back all the way up to verse 35, and we'll read down. Beginning in John chapter 1, verse 35, it says, "And the next day after," this is the day after Jesus was baptized, "John stood and 2 of his disciples. And looking upon Jesus as he walked, he saith, Behold the Lamb of God. And the 2 disciples heard him speak, and they followed Jesus. Then Jesus turned and saw them following, and saith unto them, What seek ye? They said unto him, Rabbi, which is to say, being interpreted, Master, where doest thou? Where dwellest thou? He answered unto them, Come and see. And they came and saw where he dwelt, and abode with him that day. And it was about the 10th hour. One of the 2 which heard John speak and followed him was Andrew, Simon Peter's brother. He first findeth his own brother Simon, and said unto him, We have found the Messiah, which is, being interpreted, Christ. And he brought him to Jesus. When Jesus beheld him, he said, Thou art Simon the son of Jonah. Thou shalt be called Cephas, which is being interpreted a stone. Now, Andrew is probably the least known of Jesus' inner circle. In fact, most of the time when we talk about the inner circle, we name all three names: Peter, James, and John. But let's be honest, if you always look and you see these guys, they always have another guy with them almost every time, and that's Andrew. He's ordinarily left in the background of Scripture when we read. And we learn, too, that he was used by the Lord to touch one who touched thousands. Now, one of my favorite preachers to go back and listen to is Dr. Homer Lindsay. Dr. Homer Lindsay often referred to Andrew as the great inviter. And we could call him the bringer or the introducer. Because that's what we see him constantly doing. Every time we come across Peter and Andrew, Andrew's the one who's inviting people. He's the one who's reaching out to folks and introducing them to Jesus. But think about this for a moment as we look at him. Had Andrew never been born, the New Testament could have been very different. Peter may have been saved, but someone else would have had to bring him. In fact, to be honest with you, I don't know that anybody would have had the same effect upon Peter as Andrew, his own brother, to say, "Come and see who we found. We found the Messiah." And think about this: if Peter had not been won by Andrew, he would have never preached the sermon on Pentecost when 3,000 got saved. We would have eliminated 2 books from the New Testament, probably 3, 1st and 2nd Peter, and probably Mark, because the Gospel of Mark wrote it after spending a great deal of time with Peter. Only heaven knows what else would have been left out of the Bible and out of church history had it not been for Andrew. Andrew was the first of all the disciples to be called. And his eagerness to follow Christ, combined with his zeal to introduce Jesus to others, fairly typifies his character. And it's a character that he has all the way from this point into his death. Now, Peter, James, John, and Andrew. Certainly, Andrew was the least obvious guy. He was the least out front guy of the bunch. Scripture doesn't tell us a lot about him. He appears in the New Testament only 9 times, and most references simply mention him in passing. Peter is mentioned all the time. In fact, almost every time you hear about Andrew, it refers to Peter. And in fact, look at our text today. In verse 40 here, he says, "One of the 2 which heard John speak and followed him was Andrew, Simon Peter's brother." I mean, that's how you identify him. This is Peter's brother. He's even mentioned in the text here that way. However, lest we forget, Andrew was the one to introduce Peter to Jesus. Andrew shows that he had the right heart for effective ministry from the moment of his conversion to Christ. He was sharing with others. Now, we had a little exercise last Sunday night in which we were trying to encourage people to write out their testimonies. And I'm not singling anybody out. There were several folks that had difficulty doing this because they said, "Well, I don't have a big fancy testimony. I wasn't a drug dealer, or I haven't hit the end of the line. I wasn't in jail. Nothing spectacular happened." Well, let me tell you, that's not true. Something did spectacularly happen to you. When you received Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, you went from being dead to alive. That happened to Andrew. Now, Andrew was a guy who you could say was in church. He was following John the Baptist. He was getting some good preaching all the time. He was there. He was faithful even before he was saved, but he was still lost. So his testimony is, we found Jesus. We found the Messiah. His life has been changed by Jesus, and he begins to immediately tell other people, beginning with his own brother, about what he had seen. Folks, that's the right heart to have to be effective in ministry. It's not that you're the greatest speaker or the most dynamic personality. You don't have to be the guy who's comfortable in every situation. What you need to be is excited about what Jesus Christ has done for you and want to tell other people.
Amen.
Andrew's name, by the way, I don't know if you knew this or not, his name is interpreted in English as manly. That's a good name to have. Manly, right? He was a strong fisherman. His life proved him to be decisive and deliberate. He was driven by the hearty passion for truth. And folks, I know some men that way today. People who are strong men. And they have a passion for what's truth, even if it offends other folks. But there are some men who won't talk about faith. They won't talk about Jesus because they don't think it's manly. Listen, the most manly thing you can do is, if you know Jesus Christ, is to share it with somebody else.
Amen.
Because listen, there is nothing more resistant, there is nothing that's more threatening than folks who are out there who don't want to hear about Jesus. Now again, they're far and few between. Now, of course, I say that, and there's always immediately someone goes, but I know that guy. They're probably one in your life. But there's a lot of folks who want to hear. But that we are so scared of the ones who don't want to hear, we go, well, I'm not going to do that. Listen, if men, you want to be manly, you want to be tough, tell people about Jesus. Amen. Yeah, that's what Andrew did. He was manly, literally. Andrew's personal encounter with Jesus took place a few months after Jesus' baptism, a few days after Jesus' baptism. Andrew and John were standing next to John the Baptist when Jesus walked by, and John the Baptist said, "Behold, the Lamb of God." Andrew and John became the first disciples. And immediately, Andrew, who heard what had happened, learned about who Jesus was. Listen, he was so caught up in that. He was so excited about it. He could not keep it to himself. Now, I want to ask you something. Do you ever have an experience where you see something, you hear something, you learn something, and you got to tell somebody else about it?
Amen.
And the first thing you do is you call the person, you think about that person who you know would want to hear about it. And you call them up, or you go run to them, and you tell them. Listen, I'll just be honest, in my family, one of those persons is Naomi. I love to tell Naomi things that I see. I see things that I want to watch on TV. I'll see a trailer for a movie or something. I always go to Naomi, "Hey, did you see this?" Normally she saw it 3 or 4 weeks before I did. But I always want to tell her. This past week she was camp. I didn't have anybody to run to. Say, "Hey, did you see this?" So I got some stuff stored up for you. But there's that subject. And for Andrew, it was Peter. He wanted him to know this good stuff. Did you hear about it? Did you hear about it? Did you see this? Do you know what I know? Because if you don't, I'm here to tell you. Andrew and John both learned about Jesus and shared, but Andrew is the one who went immediately and began sharing with his loved ones. Folks, I want to encourage you to have a wonderful life today. A life of faithfulness. And this is how you do it. You look at who Andrew is and what he did, and you apply it to your life. First of all, I want us to take a look at some special things about Andrew. The first special thing about Andrew is that he saw the value of individual people. He saw the value of individual people. Andrew appreciated the value of one soul. He was known for bringing individuals, not crowds, to Jesus. When he found out about who Jesus was, what did he do? He went to Peter. He brought him. Almost every time we see him in the gospel accounts, he's bringing just one person to Jesus, one at a time. He brought Peter to Jesus. He brought the little boy with his lunch to Jesus, just one. Andrew has been referred to as the first missionary because of the Jewish people he brought to Jesus. Andrew was also been referred to as the first foreign missionary because he's the one who saw the Greeks standing afar off and brought them to come and talk with Jesus. people do not come to Jesus as an immediate response to a sermon. They don't respond necessarily to something that they read in the newspaper about Jesus, or a TV show that they watched about Jesus. They come to Jesus because of the influence of one individual in their life. All of the fruit of Peter's ministry is ultimately also the fruit of Andrew, his brother, who was faithful as an individual witness. Let me give you some more modern day examples. How many people here, by show of hands, know the name of Edward Kimball? Anybody? Ever heard of him? All right, let's do it this way. How many of you ever heard the name of D.L. Moody? Y'all heard of Moody? Some of you may not know D.L. Moody, but you know the Moody Bible Institute or Moody Radio. Moody was a great evangelist, but do you know who Kimball was? Kimball was a Sunday school teacher. Edward Kimball taught D.L. Moody in Sunday school and led him to Christ. Edward went to a Boston shoe store when there was an 18-year-old Dwight Moody working there. And Edward cornered him in the stockroom and shared Jesus with him. Kimball was anything but bold by nature. Many people referred to him as timid, soft-spoken. He went to that shoe store frightened, trembling, unaware of whether he had the courage to confront this young man who was known for his crude behavior and language, who was obviously illiterate. And even though he was afraid to do it, he went there to share the gospel, even if he was trembling in his boots as he recalled the incident. After Moody accepted Christ, he began to attend Edward's Sunday school class and was totally, before that, untaught. He was ignorant about the Bible, and yet Kimball faithfully shared Jesus, faithfully shared the Scripture over and over again to Moody. This is what he said: I decided to speak to Moody about Christ and about his soul. I started downtown to Holton's shoe store. When I was nearly there, I began to wonder whether I ought to go just then during business hours. And I thought maybe my mission might embarrass the boy. That when I went away, the other clerks might ask who I was, and when they learned, might taunt the boy and ask if I was trying to make a good boy out of him. While I was pondering over it all, I passed the store without even noticing it. Then, when I found I had gone by the door, I determined to make a dash for it and have it all over at once. Kimball found Moody in the stockroom, and he spoke to him his words with limpid words. Later, he said, I never could remember what I said. I know it was something about Christ and his love, but that's all I remember. He admitted that it was a weak appeal, but Moody then and there gave his heart to Jesus. Tens of thousands of people testified that they came to Christ under Moody's ministry. And through the Moody Bible Institute and the other ministries that he began, many thousands of people have been trained into the ministry and are sharing Jesus every day. All of this done because one man was faithful. Amen. One man was faithful to share. Moody led C.T. Studd, the great pioneer missionary. William Chapman, who himself became a well-known evangelist of Christ. Moody founded the Bible Institute. And it all began when one faithful man introduced others to Christ. Folks, let me tell you, you can make a difference. You see, I remember my Edward Kimball. My Edward Kimball was in 10th grade. He didn't even teach a Sunday school class. I'm sorry, he was in 5th grade. He was 10 years old. Didn't even teach a Sunday school class. All he knew is that the Lord laid on his heart to walk across the street and talk to that boy who was always in fights and always using language that he shouldn't, and tell him about Jesus and invite him to church. Because of that moment, a few years later, God would call me into ministry. And I've been preaching the gospel now for about 20 years. And some people have been saved, and some of those folks that have gotten saved have gone on to Bible college, and some of those guys are leading churches that are much larger than any church I've ever dreamed to lead. And it's not because of me, and it's not even because of that boy, but it's because of what Jesus Christ can do with one person. Amen. Folks, we need some Edward Kimballs at New Home Baptist Church. We need some Jeff Conyers who are willing to just go tell their friend about Jesus. We need some Andrews who will go to their brother and tell him what he's found. Not only did Andrew see the value of individual people, but I want you to know that he saw the value of insignificant gifts. Some people see the big picture more clearly just because they appreciate the small things. They understand how a small item can affect a larger thing in the system. Let me give an example. When I was a boy in school, I remember we all lined up and we went out to the PE field and we looked up into the sky towards the east, and we watched the space shuttle in the distance, the contrail going up. And then we saw a big white ball and then two other lines going off. What we experienced that day was the Challenger explosion. Do you know if you go back and trace it all down, one little O-ring caused an explosion. It killed 7 people. One small thing caused that big catastrophe. Folks, let me tell you, oftentimes it's one small thing that makes everything work. And without it, the whole system will fail. Folks, in the church and in God's kingdom, it's not the big things that God uses, it's the small things. It matters more to God, your individual choices, what's going on in your life, matter more than the big systems that we put in place. Andrew had vision to see the significance, the value of small things. Listen, when Jesus had 5,000 people around, he wanted to feed them. He asked his disciples, "What do y'all have?" Now Philip, his vision wasn't so good. What he did is he became overwhelmed by the size of these. Well, man, there's 5,000 people here. A whole day's work, 2-3 days work. We just couldn't come up with that money. There's no way to feed all these people. Why don't you send them home? And there are people in the church today that are that way. Our vision has become overwhelmed by the great need. We look out into our neighborhoods. Listen, it's Sunday morning. Think about who's not in a church anywhere in Taylor County. There are more people in Taylor County out of church than there are in church at this hour.
That's right.
Now we think about it and say, there's no way we can help everybody. There's no way that we can do it all. That's okay. Listen, we don't need to be like Philip and say, listen, it's just too big. We need to be like Andrew. Andrew said, hey, there's just one boy over here. And he's got a couple of fish, and he's got a few loaves, a few slices of bread. It ain't much, but Jesus, he's willing to share it. He saw the small thing. He saw the small thing. And he brought it to Jesus. Listen, when you look out there and you see your neighbor, no, man, it's just too many of them. Say, this one right here, this one I can share. This one right here I can tell about Jesus. Maybe I can't tell everybody. Maybe I can't fix everything. Maybe I can't repair all the problems in the world. But this one person I can love with the love of Jesus. God's ability to use a gift is in no way hindered or enhanced by the size of the gift. God can take the small things, whether it's the widow's 2 mites, whether it's the little boy that has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. But he can take those small things and do big things with them. Folks, oftentimes the reason why God chooses to use the small things instead of the big things, or the ignorant things rather than the well-learned things, is this. You see, if it was a lot of money, if it was a lot of food to share, we go, well, that's natural. He's just being generous. But for God to take, we say, anybody could have done that. But when God gets a hold of something insignificant and does something major, everybody goes, only God can do that. And credit goes where it belongs. Folks, it's not the greatness of a gift that counts, but the greatness of the God to whom it is given.
Amen.
The miracle of feeding 5,000 illustrates the way that God works. He takes the small sacrifice, that which seems insignificant to others, and he multiplies it to accommodate and accomplish monumental things. Again, Edward Kimball saw one person, and he shared it. God did amazing things. Andrew saw the value of individuals. He saw the value of the insignificant gift. But I want you to notice he also saw the value of inconspicuous service. Andrew is the picture of all those who labor humbly, in humble places. Ephesians chapter 6, verse 6 tells us, don't work only while you're being watched as people pleasers, but as slaves of Christ, do God's will from your heart. Think about it. There are some folks who listen, if you don't bring them up and parade them around and pat them on the back every opportunity, then they feel like they don't need served. They're hungry for attention. Andrew wasn't that kind of guy. Andrew was fine being in the background. He did not mind being hidden as long as the work was being done. Andrew is an apostle, which makes him a leader, but he was a leader with a servant's heart. We never see Andrew preaching to multitudes or founding any great institutions or large churches, but what we do see him is faithful. We have church tradition that tells us what happened to these men, these apostles, after the conclusion of the Bible. What happened to these guys? Where did they go? Well, tradition tells us that Andrew took the gospel north into Russia. And from there, he went to the west and likely into Scotland. Tradition records that ultimately he died, though, in Achaia. He was crucified. That's in southern Greece near Athens. One account says that through his witnessing, he had led the wife of the Roman governor to Christ, and that it infuriated her husband, who was a pagan. He hated that his wife had come to know Christ. He was so angry that he demanded that she recant her devotion to Jesus, and she refused. So the governor blamed Andrew and ordered his crucifixion. Again, tradition records that he was lashed to a cross that was formed in the shape of an X. That's why we refer to oftentimes the St. Andrew's cross as being the X that we see, like even on the Florida state flag. He was not nailed to the cross, but he was lashed to the cross. The shape of the X cross is is such as the prolonged suffering. See, in a regular crucifixion, it normally takes a couple of days to die, but when you introduce to that the bleeding, like we saw Christ with the fact that he was nailed and that he was punctured with the spear and stuff, he died of bleeding. But the way most people die on a cross is that they suffocate because of the fact that their weight is put on their arms and that they're pulled down and they're not able to extend their lungs and get in a good breath. Tradition tells us that he hung on that X-shaped cross and that he was there for multiple days. And as people would walk by, he exhorted each and every one of them to turn to Christ for salvation. That he died witnessing for Jesus. Folks, that we would have that kind of faithfulness would change the world. It would change our churches today. Folks, I believe that the most important thing we can do is not to have 50 or 60 preachers in the church standing up and preaching, but that we can have a multitude of individuals going to individuals, one by one, winning folks to Christ. Because then we would see a multiplication of the kingdom. We would see the world change. At the end of Andrew's life, he could have went back and said, you know, I never had anybody like Peter fall down and try to worship me. I never had big crowds listening to me like some of the others. I didn't write, all those epistles, and I never became famous. I guess I failed. He never had that kind of attitude. Instead, he remained faithful. And I believe that when he entered into heaven, he heard the words, "Well done, thy good and faithful servant." Folks, that's what we need to be, is good and faithful. 1 Corinthians chapter 1, Paul wrote this. He said, "Instead, God has chosen what is foolish in the world to shame the wise. And God has chosen what is weak in the world to shame the strong. God has chosen what is insignificant and displeased in the world, what is viewed as nothing, to bring to nothing what is viewed as something, so that no one may boast in his presence."
Amen.
Listen, you feel like you're insignificant, you ever feel like you're overwhelmed, you ever feel like it's too much, you say, "So I won't do it." Listen, when you feel those ways is when God can greatest use you. When you feel like it's too much, when you feel like it's too far, when you feel like you can't handle it, that's when you turn it over to God and let Him use you. Because this is what you find from most faithful folks who share their testimonies, who reach people for Jesus. They'll say something along those lines. I even heard someone today testify to this. They say, "We didn't even know what we were going to say until we began to share. God gave us the words." Folks, if we be faithful, we will see the value of winning one person. We will see the value of sacrificing even just a little bit of our time, our talent, and our treasure to the kingdom of God. That God will multiply and bring upon blessings that we could never imagine receiving, even if we had given everything. So would you be faithful today? Would you be faithful with your testimony? Even if you've never hit rock bottom, even if you've never been to prison or ever addicted to a substance, would you be faithful to share what God has done in your life? Would you be faithful to tell them what Jesus has done for them? Because you know what Jesus has done for you. Would you make a commitment to live a wonderful life for Jesus? A life of faithfulness, a life of sharing. Let's close.